Alright, here we go. We're going to make a tutorial. This tutorial is going to cover the creation of a part that can then be used in a chocolate mold, on the chocolate mold project. Now, if you remember the chocolate mold project, you're going to probably mill a couple pieces of butterboard or wood or something. But we're going to assume that they have the dimensions of 2 inches by 3 inches. It's going to be a 2 inch by 3 inch block with a sufficient depth for whatever kind of mold we're doing. So we want to make sure that we're designing something that's going to fit into 2 of those blocks. So if the 2 blocks come together, our mold needs to fit inside there so that it's a cavity that's actually fillable. So what I'm going to make is a sphere, something similar to a basketball, and I'm going to make it with a theme for our high school of some sort. Okay, so I'm going to start with a sketch, and when I click sketch, it opens up the 3 major planes: the XY, the YZ, and there's the YZ, and there's the XZ plane. Those are your 3 main planes. I'm just going to pick the XY, which is typically our front face, and you notice we're looking at the front face now. I'm going to take a circle, and I'm going to go ahead and lock it right to that middle origin. I'm just going to put a circle on there. I'm going to go to dimension, and I'm going to make my dimension of this. Let's make the circle 1.5 inches in diameter. So that's what it's going to look like. Now I'm going to take a line, and I'm going to start at the top of the circle, and I'm going to drop down to the bottom of the circle. And then I can be done with that line, so I'll right click and say OK. And now I can use the trim feature right here, because I really only want this to be a half circle. So I'm going to click on that guy right there. So now I have a half circle that has a diameter of 1.5, although it's really got a radius of 0.75. Okay, now we're going to do what's called revolve. So if we go to 3D model, and we're going to choose this feature right here called Revolve. That's going to allow me to now select a profile and an axis. So I'm going to, for the profile, I want to select this half circle, which it already did for me. And for the axis, I'm going to go ahead and select this axis right here, which is in the middle. And that's going to make a full sphere. And so it's going to look like that. And we'll say OK. And we're going to put a plane on the front face of this. So we click on plane, and we go look at the standard planes right here. I'm going to choose this XY plane, and just come right out to the front of this, and you'll see it chooses a plane. It puts that plane so that it's tangent to that sphere. And if I look at the front of it and then look at the bottom of it, you can see that that sphere is right on the front of that. So now we're going to put a sketch on that sphere. And I'm going to put some text across here for whatever I want it to say. So let's say text, and do a little box. And let's say Katie. And that is then going to put those letters on here. Now it's smaller than I want it to be, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to right click and say OK. And then I'm going to right click on this text and say edit text. And I'm going to highlight the Katie and say I want it to be bigger than that. So I could choose from in here, or I can make my own dimension. And I might say let's make it 1/4 inch. And say OK. And now it's bigger. And what I can do is I could then drag this. I want to get it nice and centered. So that's pretty decent right there. And maybe I want to make it bold. So I'm going to go to edit text, and I'm going to select those letters and make them bold, just like that. And you can stretch them to make them wider if you want. And let's just make them a little bit bigger, just so we can actually see them when I print this thing. So how about 0.4? Alright, and let's bring it over. That's actually too big. So one more time. Let's go edit that text. Okay, where's my text? Edit text. Alright, and let's go 0.35. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and, oh, no, this is we're going to extrude. I'm going to extrude that text, and I'm going to tell it to go back until it hits that material. So it's coming forward right now, so I want to say go back to where it's actually hitting the material. and I just want to say to next. So it's going to, some of the letters in the middle aren't going to do much of anything at all, and some of the letters on the outside are going to do more. Okay, so, right. So now I've got a sphere with Katie on it, and I can go to this work plane and right click on the outside of it and uncheck visibility. And there is Katie. Now, if you want to put seams on this, we can put seams to make it like a basketball. But at this point, I think I'm not going to worry about that. So that is making a sphere with text on it. We're going to make that lesson 1.
How do I get something?
All right, I changed my mind. We are going to put a seam on this. So we're going to put a plane, and I want it to go right through this sphere right here. So what we're going to do first is choose the plane that we want to do it on. And let's go to this right here. And it's already selected right through the middle. You can see this displaying right in the middle here. So I'm just going to click on a corner and pretend like I'm going to move it. It gives me the option to do an offset, but I don't really want to offset. I want it to be right in the middle. So let's say OK, so that that plane is right in the middle. And then we're going to do a sketch on this plane. And it's going to look like we're looking right at the front. We're really not. We have a plane right through the middle. And so I'm going to right click and say slice graphics so that I'm looking at the middle. Now I'm looking right in the middle of this sphere. And I'm going to project the geometry. So if this is project geometry right now, what it does is it activates different edges basically that we can use. So I'm going to come click on this face, and you'll see that the text turn yellow. I'm going to click on the outside edge so that the edge turns yellow. And that's really what I want. And now I'm going to go to circle, and I'm going to use the same center point that I already have. And my seams, on a real basketball, the seams come in slightly. But because I'm doing a mold and I want it to release correctly, I'm going to do my seams slightly outside of it. So I'm going to give this guy a diameter. Remember, the initial diameter of this is 1.5. So let's just do something slightly more than that. So 1.55 would be fine. It's actually maybe even more than I want. But we'll use it. So we'll say, OK. And remember, with the chocolate mold, it's really, really small detail, probably won't come out well, so you want to kind of pronounce these things. So we've got a good diameter on here, and I'm going to now go to 3D model, extrude, and let's select this area in between, and I'm going to tell it to go both ways. So it's going to extrude, and I don't want it to go a full inch. I want it to do something real small. Let's try 1/10 of an inch. And you can see what that looks like, and even that's way too much. So let's try 1/20th of an inch, which is 0.05. And with that, we're going to say OK. And what we get there is we've got a little seam, and that goes around the outside of this. Now, I know the real basketball, the other seams curve a little bit, but we're going to go with this, and I'm going to add, I want to do 3 of these. So let's see, can we put an axis through this? No. I'm going to put another plane that goes right through this, but perpendicular to the first one I did. So that's going to end up being this YZ plane right here. So I'm going to click, and it's right in the middle. I'm going to just go click and hold on the corner. It says, do you want to offset it? No, I don't. OK, so now I've got 2 planes that intersect one another right in the middle of this, and I'm going to put an axis right on that middle point. So I'm going to go axis, and I want my axis to go through this plane and through this plane. So now I have an axis right through the middle of my sphere. Okay, and I've got this one little seam I created. So now what we're going to do is called a circular pattern. So I'm going to click on circular right here. The feature that I want to pattern is this seam. So go select my seam. And the axis, the rotation axis that I want to rotate it around is this axis right here. And it defaulted to 6, which really does look like 3. I'm going to go and change it to 3. And you notice it doesn't look any different. They're really rotating. They should be rotating about 120 degrees from one another, something like that. And let's hit OK. And so now I have something that kind of looks like a basketball. Not really, but we'll say it's good enough. And it's got some text coming off of it. And I don't need to look at these work planes anymore, so I'm going to right-click on them and just hit visibility. And right-click on this one and hit visibility. And same thing with this little work axis. So just right-click on it. And now we have something that kind of looks like a basketball that says Katie. All right, that is step 1 of the chocolate mold process.